Like and subscribe right now, or you're going to have terrible luck for the next week.
Explosions are either natural or artificial. Regardless of the circumstances surrounding it, it results in loss of life and property. Here are the 10 biggest explosions caught on camera. Number 10. Chernobyl. In 1986, a nuclear reactor exploded at Chernobyl in Ukraine, which was still a part of the Soviet Union. The blast blew off a 2,000-ton lid off the reactor and sent out 400 times more radioactive fallout than the Hiroshima bomb, thereby contaminating more than 77,000 square miles of Europe. About 600,000 people were exposed to high doses of radiation, and more than 350,000 people were evacuated from the infected areas. The accident killed 30 operators and firefighters within 3 months, and several other people died later. 237 people were diagnosed with acute radiation syndrome, of which some of them died within a few weeks. The disaster was a unique one and the only accident in the history of commercial nuclear power where radiation-related fatalities occurred. The Chernobyl blast contributed to the fall of the Soviet Union. More than 30 years on, scientists estimate that the zone around the plant would be inhabitable for up to 20,000 years. Number 9. Trinity Blast. The first atomic bomb in history detonated in 1945 and was dubbed the Gadget. It exploded at a force of 20 kilotons of TNT. While watching the test, J. Robert, a scientist, said that all he could think of was the line in the Hindu scripture that talked about death. Nuclear weapons were later used to end World War II and ushered in decades of annihilation and fear. Later, some civilians in New Mexico might have been exposed 1,000 times to public radiation far beyond the recommended limit. A special tour of the site was conducted in 1995 to mark the 50th anniversary of the Trinity test. More than 5,000 visitors were at the venue to commemorate the occasion. The area averages 2,000 to 3,000 visitors yearly and remains a popular destination for people interested in atomic tourism. It is open to the public twice yearly, and the residual radiation at the site is 10 times higher than average background radiation. Number 8. China warehouse explosion. 2 explosions in the port of Tianjin, northern China, left more than 100 people dead and more hundreds injured. The blast happened in a warehouse containing flammable and hazardous chemicals like ammonium nitrate, sodium cyanide, potassium nitrate, and sodium nitrate. An official of the Tianjin Dongjiang Port Ruihai International Logistics was arrested after the blast. There were suggestions that the water sprayed on the chemicals may have triggered the explosion. Calcium carbide, for example, reacts with water to create a highly explosive acetylene. The China Earthquake Network Center said the first explosion had a power equivalent to 3 tons of TNT detonating, while the second one was 21 tons. The second was so big that the satellites orbiting Earth picked it up too. Number 7. Underwater nuke test. On July 26, 1946, the US military experimented with a new type of nuclear test. In charge, the task force suspended an atomic device 90 feet below the water's surface in one of the isolated rings of coral and land that make up the Marshall Islands. The military leaders who proposed the test wanted to prove that their ship could ride out a nuclear attack and that the fleet was obsolete. Nuclear scientists questioned the point of the test as it turned out to be more controversial than expected. When the nuclear device exploded, it created a giant underwater bubble of hot gas. Seconds later, the bubble hit the seafloor and blasted a crater 30 feet deep and 1,800 feet wide. The lagoon surface erupted into a giant water column shot more than 5,000 feet into the air. LSM-60 and Arkansas, a battleship, were among the first ships to be sunk by an atomic bomb. Many other ships were not spared as radiation levels became dangerously high. The nuclear test slated for the same year was postponed after the aftermath of the first one. Number 6. Carbide pesticide plant in Bhopal. An explosion at the Union Carbide pesticide plant in Bhopal on December 3, 1984 has to be one of the worst disasters in history. The blast killed over 2,000 people and another 200,000 were injured when toxic gas enveloped the city. Bhopal is home to over 1 million people and is located in India's Madhya Pradesh region. A day before, workers on a late-night shift were supposed to make pesticide 7. Within the next 12 hours, a series of errors led to the disaster. There was a problem with one of the tanks, and at about 11 p.m. that night, they noticed a dangerous level of pressure in the tanks. Soon, the workers were having a physical reaction to the leak, but the supervisor wanted to wait for a tea break to investigate the situation. By then, it was too late as the plant blew up in flames by 12:15 a.m. Firefighters tried to stop the gas from escaping the plant, but to no avail as equipment failed to function. The drivers of the emergency buses ran away rather than drive workers to safety. The workers were unable to immediately inform local authorities, claiming that the phone lines weren't working. Number 5. Mount St. Helens eruption. Mount St. Helens has been dormant since 1857. However, there was an explosive steam eruption on March 27, 1980, followed by alternating periods of minor explosions. On the morning of May 18, 1980, a 5.1 magnitude earthquake triggered a gigantic landslide on the mountain's north face. The blast reached 660 degrees Fahrenheit and speeds of about 300 miles per hour. The blast was followed by floods, pyroclastic flows, and mud flows. The rivers around Mount St. Helens were buried deep in deep layers of debris and mud. There was also a vertical eruption of gas and ash formed 16 miles away that produced ash falls as far east as central Montana. About 57 people and thousands of animals were killed, and a lateral air blast blew down trees. Hundreds of square miles were reduced to nothing, causing over $1 billion in damage. The May 18, 1980 eruption is the deadliest and economically destructive volcanic eruption in the history of the United States. A film crew that wanted to document the destruction lost their way as the compass spun in circles. Number 4. Fertilizer plant explosion in Texas. On April 17, 2013, a fire outbreak at the West Fertilizer Company turned into an ammonium nitrate explosion. The facility blew up only 20 minutes after the fire was reported to emergency dispatchers. West, a small town hosting the facility, felt the impact emotionally and physically. Following the incident, the city received support from well-meaning individuals and neighboring communities. The explosion claimed 15 lives, 12 of which were first responders. Over 160 people sustained various degrees of injuries, and the catastrophe wrecked over 500 buildings. This event happened barely a few days after the Boston Marathon bombing, so people thought it was an act of terrorism. Because of the effect of the blast, the West community needed help. Residents donated food supplies and blood to help survivors. Over $290,000 of relief funds were raised, and a vigil was held to pray for people impacted by the explosion. The explosion was national news that the then President Barack Obama attended the memorial service in honor of the victims. Number 3. Tsar Bomb. On October 30th, 1961, a specially equipped bomber flew towards Novaya Zemlya, a remote island used for nuclear test. It was accompanied by a smaller plane equipped with a movie camera and instruments for monitoring air samples. Attached to the underside of the aircraft was a thermonuclear bomb that couldn't fit inside the interior bomb bay. Tsar Bomb's yield is estimated to have 57 megatons, about 3,800 times the power of the 15-kiloton atomic bomb that destroyed Hiroshima. When the giant bomb detonated over the target, it was so powerful that it destroyed everything within a 2-mile radius. In Soviet towns from 100 miles away, wooden houses were destroyed and brick and stone structures were damaged. Tsar Bomba's test was symbolic as it escalated the tension between the Soviets and the US. This bombing made headlines in the US, but the government wasn't impressed by the display of nuclear destruction. It's more than 60 years after this detonation, yet no explosive device has come close to its destructive power.
Now it's time for today's best pick.
A subscriber recently came across this video and thought to share it with us. We had followed this incident long before now, so it was pertinent that we talked about it again. Like him, if you find something disturbing, send it to us and we'll do justice to it. Number 2. Beirut Blast. On August 2nd, 2020, a 2,750 ton of ammonium nitrate exploded on the port of Lebanon's capital, Beirut. Researchers say the explosion's force is one of the largest accidental non-nuclear explosions in history. The blast shattered windows around the capital and destroyed 3 neighborhoods. Over 200 people were killed and thousands injured. Engineering researchers say that the explosion had a force equivalent between 550 and 1,200 tons of TNT. Thousands of tons of ammonium nitrate have been sitting on Beirut's port for 6 years. The cargo was first abandoned on a ship that sat on the city's port but was later moved to a nearby warehouse, the site of the explosion. Ammonium nitrate is used in the production of fertilizers and mining operations as an explosive. It's kept safely, but it can explode when mixed with fuel or exposed to intense heat. There have been countless explosions in the 21st century, but the Beirut incident would not be forgotten anytime soon.
Before we move on, I have a little challenge for you that'll take 5 seconds to complete. So here's the deal, just leave a like on the video, smash the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell, and you'll get 25 years of good luck. Try it, it really works.
Number 1. Halifax Explosion. In 1917, a French cargo ship loaded with explosives for World War I accidentally collided with a Belgian vessel in Halifax, Canada. It exploded with more force than any known artificial explosion before it. The force is said to be roughly 3 kilotons of TNT. The blast sent a white plume 20,000 feet above the city and provoked a tsunami as high as 60 feet. There was total devastation that killed about 2,000 people and injured 9,000. Naval personnel and the military worked with the civilians to bring relief to the affected people. Cities like Truro took in the homeless and stores donated to the needy. The Canadian and British governments donated millions for reconstruction, while the US organized a relief train filled with nurses, doctors, and supplies. To this day, the province of Nova Scotia sends a Christmas tree yearly to Boston as a token of friendship for the 8 Bostonians rendered in December 1917. There you have it. These are the 10 biggest explosions caught on camera. Would you mind telling us about a blast you've witnessed and how it played out? Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel to stay updated with our latest content. Until another episode, stay safe.